What is going on, everybody? It is your boy Nathan Muskills, and today we are bringing you guys a special treat. If you guys haven't had a chance to watch the last state of the game, they actually talked a lot about Endgame and everything you really want to know about Endgame. There's a lot of information that they talked about. They didn't give you any spoilers. They tried to stay away from that, but they talked a lot about Endgames. They talked about bounties. They talked about strongholds. They talked about how to unlock these strongholds, what happens at World Tier 1 once you hit level 30 endgame. And all this information was very interesting, and this was all during the state of the game. What I did is I cut down the state of the game to as small as I could. There was a lot of really good information, so I couldn't chop it up too much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did. I'm glad I'm able to bring this to you guys. If you guys have any questions, use the comment section down below. Remember, if you guys find any of my videos useful, smashing that thumbs up helps out. And if you're new to my channel, first time watching a video, hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, so when I release a video, you guys get notified. I hope you guys are ready for Division 2. Let me know what you guys think about this video.
Do you want a direct answer? What happens exactly when you hit level 30, like right away? Or do you want to?
Yes, as long as we can stay away from the spoilers.
All right.
Yeah.
So there is a, during the main campaign of the game, you're playing through a bunch of missions. You play through a handful of strongholds. And then the final stronghold, though, for the main campaign of the game is locked until you have reached level 30. So level 30, a fancy little animation will play. Stronghold unlocked. It'll say where it is. You'll get a snippet of the briefing for that. And that's actually like sort of a laser-focused moment. At that point, you've been leveling up. You've been completing missions. The narrative is all leading to this one specific place, and you're going to have your big climactic fight. Level 30, the map doesn't blossom into murderous nonsense.
Okay, so just rewinding a little bit, because we've mentioned strongholds like on the stream a little bit, but not really talked about them. What is the difference from a stronghold and a mission? Are they just like extra serious missions, or
I mean,
what can people expect from strongholds?
So what's interesting is, like, right at the start of the game, we allow the player to know about the existence of the strongholds. So they get marked on the map. You're told what they are, their importance to each of the enemy factions that appear inside of the game, and you're told you can't handle this, and you can't. You'll get murdered. You're dead.
Can you even try? Like,
they all have some sort of physical barrier preventing you from getting very far into them, but they have some defenses there arranged, depending on the fiction of them. One of them in particular, no, I don't think you could get into it. I think you'll be dead. But, you know, guys, try when the game goes live.
Go for gold.
Go for gold. But you see, oh, I need to defeat these missions in order to get into this one, these missions to get into this one, and then one of them says these missions and be level 30, so you know which one comes last. Spoiler warning, in the game itself.
Okay, cool.
And then you do fight them. They are bigger, meaner missions. So like every mission, though, they have the full mission features. They've got all the difficulty selectable once you've beaten them in story. Like, all of that stuff is in there, you know, checkpoints and familiar things. But we wanted to call out that they're bigger and meaner. They have significant plot. They're very significant to the plot of the game. And, like, we will use them throughout the course of events in the game as the focal points. We say, this is big and significant. It will never be insignificant.
Okay, so let's say I've finished that stronghold that is locked behind level 30. The last stronghold in the campaign.
Yes.
The last thing you do in the campaign. What happens then? All
right, so you've completed that, and plot happens. There's a celebration. Congrats, you've beaten the game! Hooray! That celebration does not last particularly long. More plot happens.
Oh my god.
And then you are taken to the map, and you can actually see this sort of like, almost like blood running down the streets as the city is invaded. You see the final stronghold, Tidal Basin, you become aware of now. And then you see it reach its tendrils out into the 3 other strongholds that exist. And then you can see the missions that are essentially defending those strongholds.
Okay. So let's just take a little bit of a beat there, because obviously then there's stronghold stuff that we need to do. But I'm level 30. I want to explore the world. Can we just take a look? We have a prepared video.
Can we roll tape?
Of the difference between what a level 15 map looks like, and then some of the things that you'll get to see once you're level 30. And there's a bunch of stuff in there. So if World Tier 1.
Yes.
Okay, so World Tier 1 opens up once you've finished?
Once you finish that final stronghold.
Yes, in the campaign.
in the campaign.
Okay. So here we see level 15. And people kind of, that might look a little bit familiar from the beta, not the zones, but the look of it. So we get a lot more red once we are in World Tier 1. What becomes available to players in World Tier 1 outside of those things? So I'm thinking living world system and all of that.
Yeah, so like a lot of stuff suddenly changes inside the living world because Black Tusk has taken over, those main missions. They've taken over all of the strongholds. All of the factions are forced onto the street. So you've taken over control points in the past. That's happened during the course of the campaign, and those were permanent. And now, once the invasion starts, now they've become fully dynamic. So they're instantly taken over by all of the factions because that's where they live now. Their homes are taken over by the Black Tusk. And now them and each of the settlements are fighting over control and attacking different ones. And you saw the map light up there. That is largely attacks and convoys of enemy troops and enemy equipment, as well as, I'm not certain it was obvious inside of that clip, but one of the settlements can be blockaded, and now you can't fast travel to it anymore. You have to lift that blockade by actually doing an event and taking over the blockade. And oh goodness, there are a bunch of new Black Tusk related living world activities that they get up to stuff, and they are going to do that stuff. As well as the moment you hit World Tier 1, you get a call from your friend, either Coop Dennison, I can't remember whether it's Coop or Manny at that point, who says, okay, you need a bigger gun. You're going to need a bigger gun. Here, have the specializations become available right then. Because Black Tusk is not messing around, and also you are now functionally below their level.
Okay, so
gear score suddenly exists. Like, for those of you that have played Division 1, like, suddenly gear score is around as a concept for you to be paying attention to. And you're functionally a little below the enemies, and that makes life hard.
That's cool. Kind of a bit of a kick in the pants. Like, you thought you were a badass. These guys are serious business. And
you definitely have that growing power fantasy throughout the game where it's like, oh, I'm getting more skills, I'm becoming more powerful, I can out-level the content, I can actually get above it. And then here are these guys who are like, no, actually, not today. Not today, son.
All right, so I'm in World Tier 1. I get a specialization. There's more to do in the living world because that logic kicks in of all of the factions fighting over the world.
Yes.
Which is, I actually got to take a little bit of a peek behind that curtain at all the node interactions.
You looked at
it's super cool. And it was kind of explained to me in layman's terms that all of the factions have their own motivations, and the logic behind that is completely dynamic. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So, I mean, that is, so technically the living world system is not my baby, but I know a lot about it. So you've donated stuff to control points. So it's like components, water, and food. And those are the resources that kind of govern a majority of the desires of the world. They also have another desire, which you could describe as like their motivation. So that's what's making them go like, we should do, if they have enough food, water, and components, they will do their goal activities. And so their control points will sit there and go, oh, we should execute some hostages.
Well,
we should, let's do propaganda. Less dark, maybe.
Sure.
I've heard the propaganda. It's not less dark. And you can go and like foil their activities out there, and that'll make them, like essentially re-strategize. They'll launch they'll launch different activities in response to that.
But they interact with each other as well. That's the cool thing, because it's not just about your interactions with them. They'll actually, like if one of them is more repressed and and they've been really restricted, they'll more aggressively expand.
They'll get a bunch more aggressive, and that actually applies to the settlements as well. And so the settlements are also like, they want to control points as well. They don't like being not able to function in the streets, and so they will also become more aggressive as a result.
So World Tier 1 to World Tier 3. There's some differences between how the system works from Division 1 to Division 2. So I think it's kind of good to highlight that, because it's not just something that you reach an arbitrary number and then toggle from your map or anything like that.
Yeah, so the world tiers are now mandatory. I like to think of them as this is the leveling process in the end game, because what it is that when you see those 3 strongholds that become available that were previously the faction strongholds, and each of them has 2 missions connected to it. I gesture at the ground wildly.
We actually have a fantastic video of exactly this. So let's bring that up while we chat about how that works. So each of those strongholds is tied to a world tier?
So not any individual stronghold is tied to a specific world tier, but rather, all 3 of these strongholds are taken over. They each have 2 missions that are locking them, and they have a required gear score. On World Tier 1, that required gear score is 275 for any of the strongholds.
But you could choose any of those strongholds as your first target?
Exactly.
Okay, but they are locked by 2 specific missions?
Specific, like, invaded missions.
Okay.
So you have to take out those 2 invaded missions. That unlocks the stronghold if you've got enough gear score, which if you do some side activities, you'll get there in time. And then you can do the stronghold itself. When you complete the stronghold, it's, this transition timer comes up. It says, hey, get your loot. You got 60 seconds. And then congratulations, you're in World Tier 2.
Okay.
And that process repeats, for each of the different strongholds in that sort of escalation. And you'll actually see changes in the world, because when you take out a stronghold, all of the name zones around it cease being invaded. You'll see a lot less Black Tusk activity in them. You'll see more... you'll be able to see more friendly activity, assuming that you've taken back a lot of control points. If not, you'll see a lot of faction activity. Congratulations. Sure. It's the True Sons, your best friends.
Yeah, I like them.
Yeah,
apart from the fact that they go prone. Dick.
I love that they go prone. It's hilarious.
So I've taken out the stronghold. My world tier gets bumped up to the next one.
Yes.
So we're now world tier 2. Enemies, basically, they get higher gear score as well?
Yeah, functionally they get higher gear score. Yeah.
All right, and then all of the activities bumped up as well.
And so you've got, like, that pattern persists until you have completed all 3 of the strongholds and you reach World Tier 4.
Okay. Some new and interesting things happen in World Tier 4, though.
Yeah, and I've realized I skipped something that technically unlocks in World Tier 1, which is...
let's go back.
Because I realized that we're going to get to bounties later.
Yes.
But there's a character you meet during the course of the campaign who is lovingly called the Snitch. Real name Jared Nash. Real nice guy. And you can talk to him to get bounties, because for some reason he just knows the people who need to die.
Cool.
Nothing troubling about that at all. Once you reach World Tier 1, talking to him will reveal the next appearance of his best friend, Cassie Mendoza, the gun runner. And
this is cool. And we haven't talked about this yet. I'm super excited about this. For people who want to identify the Snitch, my favorite part is that he kind of looks like Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing. He's rocking a fancy hat and a short sleeve Hawaiian.
And he's shuffling a deck of cards, which is oddly also significant to the game, because there is a card deck related... I don't know. Should I go into that at all?
Let's come back to the deck of 52 in a little bit, because that's kind of a bonus to me.
We're getting deep into it.
So the Snitch shows up during your 1 to 30 experience.
Yes.
At some point.
Yeah. A plot thing happens, and now the Snitch is around.
All right. But so Cassie Mendoza, who's the gun runner, is a vendor that is on the map somewhere at certain times and has some serious...
Yeah, she's selling
equipment.
Serious kit. She's like always got a named weapon. She'll always have a mix of a few very good items. She keeps her stock, I believe, for a week, but she can appear every day and a half. But you will not be able to find her location, even if you know where it is online, unless you found the Snitch.
So she won't spawn.
She won't spawn. She's not in your world unless you have found the Snitch.
The thing to know is, and this was kind of worrying to me, like, if you're in a specific time zone, you won't necessarily be asleep every time she spawns.
Yeah,
we want to make sure everyone gets a chance to.
She cycles every day and a half, so she's essentially a 12-hour difference. So people in the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere will have equal chances of running into her at a convenient time.
I like that. That makes me very happy.
Yeah, I like also when you find her location, it gives a countdown to when she will appear, so you can be like, oh, I do want to be home at 6. To catch her and buy whatever crazy weapon it is that she's selling.
So she will show up at World Tier 1?
Yes, she starts showing up at World Tier 1.
All right, and I guess the gear she has in her inventory will scale to World Tier 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes, correct. And so, yes, if you buy her named weapon at World Tier 1, it is a World Tier 1 version of that named weapon.
The deck of 52 that the Snitch has, let's talk a little bit about that before we talk about the other activities in World Tier 4?
So the deck of 52 is 52 named bosses. Each suit of cards is dedicated to a faction inside of the game, and they are wandering the world for the players to encounter.
These are similar to Division 1's named enemies in the
Yeah,
open
they're
world?
kind of, I mean, long live the Bullet King. They are a collection of sorts that you can encounter them. There are rules for what causes you to encounter them and where, but they are in the open world. They're not messing around. The royals of that suit of cards are just outlandishly dangerous.
How will I come across them? Because I mean, in the Division 1, you had 15 open world ones, again, outside of the Dark Zone, in the living world, and they would respawn on a timer. These are different in that once you've killed them...
Once you've killed them, you're not going to encounter that same one again until you've taken out all 52. So you're not going to get repeats inside of the set. And you actually do get the card off of them, which I guess they're carrying their own card, and let's not think about that too much.
Whoa. Self-important much.
That's terrible implication that Jared Nash has given them all a card and been like, there's going to be someone coming for you.
Hunt.
I try not to think about it too much. And then, but they've got great loot on them. Like, what's crazy is like at one point I was fighting some Black Tusk on the road. I heard them call for help and like, oh no, we need backup or whatever it is that they said.
The Black Tusk needed backup.
Yeah, because I'm terrible. I'm a horrible man with a crossbow that explodes.
Sure.
And then a medic came in. He had a name over his head, and he was one of them. He just happened to be nearby, and he came in with his posse, and it was a terrible ordeal.
That is
it did not go well for me.
What do I? And there's for each suit, there's a collection.
Yes.
What do I get for completing these things? Obviously, the loot that I get off them.
So I think there are a set of commendations that are kind of related to them, like oh, the first time you complete a suit. I can't honestly remember that.
No,
like,
that's good. I don't want to get too many
stuff,
spoilers anyway.
and also they have pretty wild like drops.
Cool.
They're good. They're very good. I love every time I run into them. I'm really happy. They also tend to show up when you really, honestly, kind of, I would say, don't want them to. Like, of course, I'm always excited when I run into them, but it's like, oh, I'm running to do a bounty, and then there are these people.
All right. Speaking of bounties,
yes.
Because throughout the campaign, and we showed this in the beta, there were 2 named zone liberation ones, which are bounty-esque.
Yes. So I mean, at the core, those are the bounty experience. If you failed one, you actually were able to replay them. So this would be Meat Wagon and the 12th Street Spice Lords, were the name zone bosses of. Oh my gosh, is it actually called Downtown East? It is. Look, we've got dev names for all of these, and I'm trying not to say them wrong. So Downtown East and Federal Triangle were available. And if you triggered those, they would happen automatically when you triggered the conditions of completing the Name Zone Liberation project. But if you failed or got disconnected or whatever, you could restart them at any time by going to the bounties menu, and there they are. Like the moment they're activated, they are a real bounty for you. And you could see their interface and look at their details and their information. They all had little stories because they're characters with names and stories.
Cute. But World Tier 4 brings in a new aspect to the bounties with the priority target network.
Yes.
And it's only accessible at World Tier 4?
At World Tier 4 and also in World Tier 5.
Sure.
But whatever. It unlocks in World Tier 4 as the priority target network. And these are like an interconnected set of 7 bounties inside of different name zones that start on hard. So you've got 4 hard ones.
We have a video for this one too. Let's bring that one.
I like node graphs. They're great.
But so it's a tiered system of bounties where you have to do a couple before you can go to the next one. So here, what are we looking at?
So we're here at Jennifer Karma Estrella, who unfortunately, due to this wonderful television screen, I have no idea what squad she's in.
Yeah.
And she's going to be a hard bounty, and you have to defeat her and the North Lawn bitches, led by Shark.
Solid.
I love video games. And if you beat both of them, then the next one inside of that network actually becomes available, which is this one, which is currently locked. And so you don't know who they are. You have the names of the targets, but you don't have the name of the squad. You don't know where they're located, and you can't buy them. You can't spend target intel to get a look at them.
And I guess they get progressively more difficult.
They do. Right. They start hard, then you get challenging, and then eventually heroic, which is a difficulty some people might be familiar with.
Yeah.
It's not messing around.
That's cool.
Those bounties are very, very hard.
And obviously the loot is...
ludicrous. Like, actually, I mean, you could have seen it inside of that screen because I think it was taken at the right time. Bounties are very lucrative, and also essentially not only with the more difficult they are they more valuable, but also the rarer they are in the cadence. So it's like, oh, that was a weekly bounty, so it is much more valuable than a daily bounty. There are daily bounties.
Yeah, that was the question. How do I get bounties?
Okay, so at some point during the campaign, plot happens.
Okay, great. You did it.
Hey,
Woo!
folks. And you will meet a character named Otis Sykes, who you'll be able to recruit. You saw staff recruitment inside of the beta as well. Meeting him and recruiting him will get you 2 normal difficulty daily bounties a day.
Okay.
These cost target intel to activate. Once you've activated them, congrats, it's yours.
How do you get target intel?
Target intel, the moment you've recruited Otis, target intel now exists as a concept inside of the world.
Okay.
Defeating enemies in the open world will get you some, as well as completing hard or higher difficulty missions.
Gotcha.
Will get you packets of them.
Cool.
And generally also like named enemies in the world or high difficulty enemies inside the world will also just have it on them. So you've got your 2 daily bounties, but as people may have noticed inside of the beta, there was also a perk that you could buy inside of the
at Coop, right?
At Coop, yes, yeah. Coop. And that had 2 upgrades on it. One adds a hard bounty to your daily bounty pool, and one adds a challenging bounty. Cool. So eventually you've got the 4 bounties that you can pick up each day by either speaking to Otis at the boo or inside of each of the safe houses. As soon as you've recruited Otis, there's a map of the city that you can interact with to be like, oh, hey, I want to know about my bounties. And you discover them from doing that.
All right. What other things do we have in World Tier 4? You've got challenge. You said challenge difficulty for the bounties. Does that apply to missions as well?
Yes. So in World Tier 4, not only do you get the priority target network becomes available, but also the challenging difficulty becomes available for missions that you replay.
Oh, okay.
So challenging difficulty is just not messing around. Like I have to cheat my way into a gear set that lets me be able to beat them solo. Highly recommend going with a group. It's something, and it's really lucrative, but it's also just like not messing around.
Priority missions, what are those?
I left out World Tier 1, I left out a thing, so now here we are. So the priority missions, if you remember the mission assignments from Division 1, that said, oh, defeat this mission on hard, oh, defeat this mission on challenge. Those make their return inside of World Tier 4, and they say, oh, do this on hard or harder, do this on challenge or harder. And these provide like just extra rewards. These are sort of subcategory of objects in the game called a project, which we're also in the beta.
Yep.
And so this is an extension of those, and they use some of the same logic. However, because they come directly from the Division network, you don't have to go turn them into a person afterwards.
Oh, cool.
Only the settlements have the concept of, oh, I've got to go hand this thing in because these guys need this stuff, and they need to give me my rewards. Starting in World Tier 1, I left this out, you actually get daily and weekly projects from the different settlements. But unlike the daily missions, which are like, oh, everybody has, go to Jefferson Trade Center on hard. Everybody in the whole world has that. The daily and weekly projects are, I would describe them as like akin to like Hearthstone's quests when they launched. Everybody has their queue of them, and they're all trying to do different things. And so it's this huge library of dailies and this huge library of weeklies. And if you don't like one, you can be like, oh, I'm going to wait till the next day and I'm just going to discard it. But if you like it and you're like, oh, I'm almost done with it, you can be like, oh, I'm going to keep this tomorrow and try to finish it tomorrow. So it doesn't roll over and you don't lose that opportunity to complete it.
Cool. All right. So I see we would come back to this later because the Living World system has a bunch of stuff in it.
Oh, yeah.
Control points in World Tier 4 start upgrading, or have the ability to upgrade beyond, it can be reinforced.
Yes.
Right?
So, imagine control points inside the world prior to World Tier 4 as always at normal difficulty. And you'll notice suddenly, like, you get to the World Tier 4 map, and you go and you highlight a control point, and you see that actually around it, all of the activities that the enemies are running have little +1 symbols next to them. Or some of them, if they're like very difficult activities, will say +2. And then you'll notice on the control point itself, oh, it says that it's at alert level 1. Man, I hope that's still the term.
Okay.
When you defeat one of those activities, oh, it's going to go up by that number. So it's like, oh, I defeated the +1 activity. It goes.
So if you piss them off enough, they'll be like, oh, we got to reinforce our control point.
Yeah, exactly. Like the fiction of it is, it's like, oh, we foiled their attack there. They're now on a higher alert. Got on the radio. They called up their pals, and their pals have come to reinforce them.
Yeah.
That actually mechanically means that, like, oh, it's level 2. That is now a hard control point.
Okay.
Oh, and you upgrade it to level 3. Oh, it's challenging, and then heroic. And that is the difficulties making their way into the world.
Okay.
That also means that that supply room inside of there is getting more and more stuff in that big orange chest.
Okay, so we can go to the 4th reinforcement.
Yes.
So 1, 2, 3, 4 is heroic.
4 is heroic.
And then that loot room is stacked.
And that loot room is stacked.
Okay.
Like, I keep being surprised when I open those, but at the same time, like, I've been living in the end game gear loop for, weeks now.
Mhm.
And it is just like, okay, oh, that stat looks interesting. I'm
Mhm.
going to keep this for that stat. Oh, that's a good talent. I'm going to keep it for that talent.
Mhm.
And you find that there's just so much stuff that you're like, oh, I'm going to craft a brand set because I need my Badger set to be on a different slot than it's currently on in order to get the stuff working. And so, like, having this slew of, oh, I can go after just a big pile of stuff is just such a boon to being able to customize your character.
One of the things that I wanted to reinforce is that this is World Tier 4, so that's at launch going to be where people come in. And then we have, in the trailer we've shown it, Tidal Basin is a thing that comes soon after.
Yes.
Which we'll talk more about in the future. But that's what unlocks World Tier 5.
World Tiers 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, and 4, the way you get out of them is by completing an invaded stronghold. Beating that is what transitions you into World Tier 5.
Yep.
Where more features unlock, which I don't know if we're talking about today.
No, we will leave that right here. But everything that happens in World Tier 4 can happen in World Tier 5.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Bounties are nuts and constantly surprising me because they're not static. We didn't make a list of 50 of them and said, oh, hey, here's this shopping list of 50 of them.
But they're infinitely varied, and we didn't touch on that before because you've built a system where they can be generated.
Yes. So, like, what's funny is the Scalpel and Butcher, who you met inside of the beta, who are the leaders of their squads, those guys are statically made, and so we've got some
One per
authored
zone,
bounties. Right? Yeah, those are the name zone guys, name zone bosses. And then there are also, during the end game campaign, after the invasion has started, there are also some authored, like, special bounties to introduce you to certain Black Tusk capabilities.
Cool.
But then, on top of that, the dailies, the priority target network, all of those are generated using a set of rules. Based on their difficulty, they get essentially more of a budget to buy more and more skills to use against you. And so they get they become more varied the more difficult they are, but also they become more dangerous. There can be additional bosses rolling inside of their posses with them, and they are bringing more enemies with them. And all of that stuff, just like is generated using rules. Like, I don't like to say that they're randomized because they're not. They have a logic to them, and there's a way to predict what they're going to have. Anybody who played mission replays during the beta noticed, like, if they played a replay more than once, they started to notice, hey, I didn't fight the same enemies every time, and sometimes they didn't come out of the same doors every time. And, like, the bigger, more wild an arena is, the more varied the stuff that can happen inside of it is. And that applies to bounties, that applies to a lot of the open world content. We've built a bunch of managers to keep managers in Logic. Some of them aren't managed in that way. To keep things fresh, but also to be like, oh, here is a balanced piece of content that we know about.
Yeah.
Like true randomness sucks because it does nasty things to you. And so we try to build it to say, like, oh, here's a good thing. Let's use that and make certain that that is one of the tools that the enemies are able to employ. And we just keep that logic going and built this whole system, or systems and systems, of being able to say, like, oh, this is a mutable, changeable place, but we try to stop it from being unfair because we've tested the individual parts well.
Coming by today, we'll see you again next week when some game thing's launching.
Oh my God.
The Division 2 is happening. All right, we can wave at the camera now and say goodbye. See you later.
Camera.
Bye.